This Sportz Blitz podcast is brought to you by LMG. Grow your business through logo design, paper products, and video production. Visit leemarketing.net to learn more.
It is brought to you by Russell Medical Center, and John Whittle from the Big Spur now joins us on the Dane Sharp Attorney at Law Hotline. How you doing tonight, John?
Hey, I'm doing wonderful. I really appreciate you guys having me on to talk some football.
Hey, man, we wouldn't have it any other way. Listen, it's our favorite time of year. It's like Christmas Eve. It's just so fantastic. Media Days is finally here. This will last us until everybody starts reporting in a couple of weeks, and I know you're excited in Columbia as well.
Yeah, it's a really exciting time in Columbia right now. South Carolina coming off a couple of 11-win seasons, and I know that's old hat to some of you folks here in Alabama, but you know it's a new thing for South Carolina, and there's a lot of hype around this team going into this season, and you know it's a lot of fun around Columbia right now.
John, to me, it's been ironic, and something we've talked about on the show quite a number of times is South Carolina represents the East back in 2010, and quite frankly, I don't think that 2010 team would have a shot against the last two teams that have played in the SEC East, or excuse me, that didn't play in the SEC East slot of the championship game. I think South Carolina has made a lot of strides, unfortunately, for the Gamecocks. You know, Georgia's played really well. Florida's getting back up there too. So it just in the SEC, you can grow by leaps and bounds, but everybody else is growing too, aren't they?
Yeah, it was really interesting the way that worked out. I mean, you bring up a good point. The last two South Carolina teams could probably beat the one that was in the SEC championship game a few years back when it kind of fell on its face against Auburn. But it's just kind of how the schedule worked out. South Carolina had a favorable schedule that year and hasn't really the last couple of years. But this team is probably the best of the bunch, and it's got a favorable schedule. So an early season start against Georgia. September the 7th, and then 3 straight road games, two big travel road games in the month of October. We'll kind of spell out the season for them. I think that will be the most difficult stretch, but the season sets up pretty well for South Carolina. Just looking at the schedule at face value.
No, I totally agree. You look at what you try to look for when you are determining strength of schedule in the SEC. Who do you avoid from the other division? And South Carolina avoids A&M, Alabama, and LSU, and that's a big deal.
It is a big deal, and South Carolina's hit on a couple of those teams last couple of years, and Georgia hasn't. It's won its fair share of division games, but hadn't been able to get past some of those SEC West schools. So, it sets up much better for the Gamecocks this year.
And South Carolina opens the season on a Thursday against North Carolina. I believe that game is it in Chapel Hill?
No, it's in Columbia this year.
Oh, it is in Columbia this year. Okay. So that game will be in Columbia. And I was listening to some other reports today. I had a pretty long drive myself today. And one of the things they made mention of was the fact that Spurrier has no love lost for North Carolina. Is there a history to that rivalry you can fill us in on?
Not really that I know about too much. North Carolina, South Carolina rivalry hadn't been played too much since the teams left the conference, and since South Carolina left the ACC, played back in 2007. South Carolina won up in Chapel Hill, and then they'll start off the season here in a couple of years playing a game up in Charlotte. And it may become a little bit more of a rivalry in football here going forward, but Steve's got a pretty good record at South Carolina in opening games, and this will be one of the big ones for him. They've opened against NC State before and won. Had a couple other big name openers. They've opened against SEC school Vanderbilt a couple of times as well and won those games. So but this will be a big one for Spurrier and a good chance to get off the season, get the season off to a good start against a big name team.
Well, of course, you open up with North Carolina, and then you've got a monstrous game against Georgia. And so Spurrier's going to start out two pretty arduous tasks back-to-back. That Georgia game, that could decide the East very early, couldn't it?
Yeah, it's definitely going to give one of those teams kind of the inside lane. But South Carolina's won 3 of those games in a row against Georgia, which has never been done before at South Carolina. And, the last 2 years hadn't been able to make it to the SEC championship game. Did, of course, 3 years ago. But, you know, it's going to give a pretty good early indication of what's going to happen in the East, but it's certainly not going to be an absolute.
Okay, don't give me Jadeveon Clowney, even though you should still be able to give me Jadeveon Clowney. Name a defender that I should keep an eye on for South Carolina this year.
Probably the guy who's going to line up right beside him, Kelsey Quarles. I think he's going to have a big year at defensive tackle. Everybody kind of knows about him a little bit throughout the conference if you've been paying close attention. And the name you may not have heard too much here lately is the guy who's going to be playing opposite Clowney is the other defensive end, Chaz Sutton. He backed up Devin Taylor last year, who was picked in the draft this past season, third round, I think it was, or fourth round. So, you know, Chaz, I think, is going to have a breakout year. Him and Jadeveon are roommates, and you know, they form a pretty good defensive end duo for South Carolina. But, you know, those are probably a couple of guys to watch and keep an eye on.
All right, for South Carolina to win the SEC East this year, Connor Shaw has to do what?
You know, that's an interesting question because, you know, if Connor Shaw doesn't do anything, then there's another pretty good quarterback there to back him up in Dylan Thompson, who's played really well at times for South Carolina, went into Death Valley and beat Clemson through the game-winning touchdown against Michigan in the bowl game last year. So, you know, at the end of the day, if Connor Shaw doesn't do anything and doesn't do what we think he's going to, he is 17-3 as a starter. That's a pretty darn good mark. So I'm not taking anything away from his ability, but I don't think Connor Shaw necessarily has to be a brilliant quarterback this year for South Carolina to be successful. Dylan Thompson has shown that he can win football games as well. Certainly it helps. The biggest key for Connor Shaw to be good just personally is just staying healthy. He's had so many injury problems over the course of his career. Missed spring practice this year with a bum foot, which kept him out some last year as well. So, you know, just a personal key for him in order for him to have a successful season. I think his biggest deal is just to stay healthy.
Well, John, thanks so much for being with us tonight. Listen, best of luck to South Carolina, and I'm going to go ahead and tell you I have cursed the Gamecocks, unfortunately, as I write for the local paper here in town, and I predicted South Carolina to win the East this year, so I got some bad news for you on that front.
Uh-oh, your record not very good?
Well, yeah, let's just say that I might owe some people.
Uh-oh. All right, well, I'll keep that news out of Columbia and out of Gamecock land, but I appreciate you guys having me on, and you know, we'll look forward to catching up with you during the season.
Yeah, please do. We'd love to have you back on, and best of luck to you and to the Gamecocks this year.
All right, take care. Thanks.
That was John Whittle with thebigspur.com. It's a great website. Go check it out. South Carolina, to me, is going to be easily top 8, top 10 team this year. I think that they have a chance to make some moves. I love their schedule. Love Jadeveon Clowney, obviously. When you've got an experienced quarterback coming back and Connor Shaw, and you avoid A&M, Alabama, and LSU out of the West, you got to love what South Carolina's doing.